I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the stand, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Professor Holly Swyers. Professor Holly Swyers, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello. Hi, Dreme. My name is Holly Swyers, and I was Dreme's professor way back in the day. And I'm a professor of anthropology at Lake Forest College, and I'm very honored to be here today.
Professor Swyers, oh, God damn it. Are we using she and they or they pronouns?
However you want to do it. I'm pronoun neutral.
In the pandemic, you had a book club, which had majority white people in it. And
yes, it did.
You asked me if I wanted to join, but you were very clear that, hey, there are not many other people of color, but I'm not expecting you to do any lifting in these conversations, but just to be a part of the conversation. I said, of course. I had my own personal agenda of like just trying to understand whiteness, especially white women whiteness during the reemergence of Black Lives Matter, because I felt like I was having a lot of conversations that was hitting a wall. So I was like, maybe I can just get some more insight. But for you, building this book club at that time and understanding how so many white people were building book clubs and not really being accountable, or it was their excuse, it was their excuse to say that they did something, but yours was very different. Why? Why start the book club? Why have the conversations? Why help white people be accountable?
This is going to be a complicated answer that is going to take a little bit to get to, I think, what you want me to talk about. Because some of it was I was just genuinely like, I was living by myself and lonely, and I wanted to like have conversations, and I wanted to have conversations in which I wasn't the teacher, in which we were sharing. From what and it was like lockdown sucked, man. But some of it was, I wanted a space where we were learning from one another more. I wanted a space where people were bringing things to the table. I wanted to know what other people were talking about and thinking about, and giving us room and space to stretch. And there were a number of folks that I knew with various different identity groups and various different experiences of life. I think a lot of whom really wanted to understand each other. And I wanted to say, how do we do this, and what do we read together? I mean, I remember, I can't remember who. I know you had us read All About Love, which I loved, which I'm now teaching. And there was poetry, and like people would be like, let's try this, let's read this. Some of it was things that I was teaching in classes that it was like, I want to have this conversation with grown, not that students aren't grown, but you know what I mean? Like people who've had a little more experience in life, they were going to bring something new to the conversation. And like, I love learning from other people. I love being in spaces where people are able to be raw and able to be vulnerable and able to talk about things that are hard and to go, wait, what does this mean? Or to recognize when they don't know what it means and push stuff. And it felt like for a time that book club operated that way. Some of it is I just wanted to hang out with people I thought was cool. It's like these are people I miss and people who I've had wonderful conversations with over time and who I think would like each other. And that was some of it. I think it's really hard for me to reconstruct my thinking from back then because it was a hot mess and my brain was fried. But yeah, that was sort of the space I was in, is like I've got all these things I'm reading and thinking about, and I've got all these things. I don't want to think about it in isolation, but I don't want to have an easy conversation or a pat your back. I wanted to have hard conversations.
Hard means what?
Confronting our own assumptions, being aware of where we are and how we're situated, and how who we are shapes what's possible for us, and how who we are, I don't want to say shapes what's impossible for us, but makes certain things harder, and it makes it harder to acknowledge those things. I was thinking about Kendi stuff and what it means to be anti-racist, but I was also thinking about some of the work, and I've been reading more of this, that's coming from scholars of color, indigenous scholars, about how do we break a system of capitalism that's taught us all these ways of being in the world that are undermining us and harming us and making it so we can't see each other and making it so that we're competing with each other or just trying to hold the other person down. We're going to survive our drowning by holding someone else under. Is I wanted to really try to think through for myself questions that I'm struggling with. It's like I'm a part of this system. And in order to live, there's a quality that I have to be part of the system, because what are my options? But I don't like the system. How do I change the system? And having a relative level of privilege, how do I use that successfully so that I'm not making it worse? Because sometimes that happens too. Oh, no. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, you have.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the Chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
What keeps you in education? You've been a professor for a very long time.
You call me old Dreme.
You're a seasoned educator.
Yeah, I like that. There was a moment in the middle of the pandemic, and then things were bad that I wasn't really sure why I was doing it. I think in the last couple of years, I felt reinvigorated for it. And some of it is some of the conversations that we had during the pandemic, but also some of the things that I've been reading and thinking about, what does it mean to decolonize our thinking. What does it mean to be anti-racist? What does it mean to think about these things seriously? What does it not just give lip service to? What do we have to change? And when do we find the places of resistance with this? It's just something I'm trying to do much more in my classes. It's like, look, we can be, claim we're progressive or do whatever it's. What are you willing to give up? And what are the costs of some of these things? And if we're not willing to push at those things, and it's fine to realize you're not willing, like recognize it but if you're going to recognize, then work with that. What are you doing when you say, okay, I'm not ready to give up? I like having a paycheck. How far am I willing to go in order to fight for something? If it means the difference between having a paycheck or not. This is a useful question. And it's easy to say, oh, money doesn't matter, whatever. But anybody who hasn't had money knows it does matter. And I want to be respectful of why are people coming to college or why are people pursuing education. When number students like, I just want to be able to make money and to survive and to do well. I said, that's fine. I mean, I think that's reasonable. How do we balance that with simultaneously trying to make a world that's more just? And how do we do it? And let's really talk about it and think about it. And I feel like if I have that thought process happening, not just for me, for as many people as I possibly can, then maybe together we can come up with something. Because we aren't going to fix it one person. One person doesn't fix things because this is so big and so systemic. But maybe over time, look, I'm going to reach more people teaching than I am with my publications. I mean, let's be honest, like that's the nature of the beast. What they hear from me, what they bring to the conversation, how they're able to have those conversations with more people. I mean, look at you, Dreme. Like I'm not going to say I've shaped you that much, but I've put little seeds, right? And now look at the way that you're taking everything out into the world and you're having more bigger conversations and bringing more people into those conversations. Mm-hmm. And that to me is how things grow. And I'm very lucky to be trusted with young people and to be able to put those questions in front of people. Say, like, think it through and think about where your limits are. Like, don't be lip servicey about it. Think about what it's really going to do and what you're willing to put on the table and why and when and how. And I think those are useful conversations, important conversations to have.
I think a lot about our senior seminar class. So I had to take a SOAN senior seminar class, and Professor Holly Swyers was the teacher. And you said that our class was called The History of Capitalism. And I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be an interesting course. And it was, 12 of us? So it was a really tiny class.
It was great. That class was amazing. That particular group was stunning.
And Swyers does not play when it comes to reading. So we are reading full books. And it's just not like a page or two or even 20 pages. It's 50 to 100 pages every week out of one book, but they're always giving us 3 books at least. And so, and having us write all this stuff. And not only is Swyers going to read everything that we write, they also comment on everything that we write. So I will always remember where I read half of the 150 pages and wrote my little piece. And Swyers wrote like, this is great, but where's the rest of the thoughts? I was like, oh my goodness, they know I didn't finish the reading. And so coming into class thinking about how are we going to talk about the history of capitalism, and every week drawing the timeline, talking about all these theorists from Adam Smith to how Wall Street is just the epitome of capitalism, how we're thinking about the white picket fence and the invisible hand and how that all interconnects with Ford and how does that interconnect with race, gender, sexuality. It was just a class that for me was a culmination of a lot of classes I had previous, but it was all together in 4 months. And it's something I bring up all the time in different ways, being like, when someone says, why study capitalism? And I'm like, well, capitalism itself is just a word, but when you break it apart, you're now studying systems, you are studying lifestyles, you are studying belief systems and values. And for me, that was the most incredible part of class, because through that class, you were being like, okay, from this, what are your beliefs? So we're reading about all these other people's beliefs, but then it started to like be able to hit you in the chest, being like, oh, I do believe in the white picket fence. But why do I believe in the white picket fence?
Yeah.
But being like, well, I don't truly believe in this type of white picket fence because I didn't grow up white or have a white picket fence, right? Like, so being like, okay, what does it mean to have a family? What does it mean to just questions that we would consider simple were really complex, being like, what does success looks like for you? That simple question being like, oh, a house and money, but how much money? What type of house? Where? And you're like, yo, why do I have to think about this? Because then you're pulling out all these values related to capitalism. You're pulling out all these values related to how other people view you. So is your success or is it somebody else's success? And I felt like all those things were important because it created more conversations in other classes for me. It created more conversations with friends, family, and just being able to understand like I had control over my own life instead of feeling like I was living my life for other people.
I think I've been thinking a lot about that, in particular, the idea of living life for other people versus living life for yourself, and especially working with 18 to 22-year-olds, which is my dominant group, because I do think we're in a historic moment too, where it's like everybody's so caught up in the grind and the like, you have to be successful in this very, very particular way. And was the question I saw, I think it was in a Wallace book. It was, or no, it wasn't. I can't remember where I saw it. What's the difference between achievement and success? Was the question. And it's a really interesting question to think about. And I feel like we have created a sense of them being equal in a way that I can see your face. It's like, yes, that. I don't think they are. But it's an interesting, I don't know. I mean, I'm in such a weird place with higher ed right now.
Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. Because of working with you and building my research project on race, how that led to me going to UCLA to study education. It was the murder of Mike Brown, and I'm struggling personally and going to classes and just trying to get through classes and talking to my Black friends. Everybody's sad or frustrated. Talking to my white friends, and they're uncomfortable and they don't know how to have conversations with me. And you saw me struggling, and you said, hey, how about you just put it in the research? And it's the first time where I was like, oh, my personal life could be academic. It's like, what does this look like? You know? And then digging into the methodologies of pile sorting and you just being asking questions to just keep coaxing me along to just think about it and work through it, and how that led into the symposium, which is like the big presentation on campus, and being able to talk about this makes me feel uncomfortable. Just conversations about race and racism on campus at the age of like 21, being like, okay, this is the conversations I'm having. This is the research I've done. I think about you a lot and being like, I wonder what it was from your perspective as a white person, being like, hey, I'm gonna work with you. What drew you to support me in this way? What kept you continuing to have conversations with me to not only help me understand my self-discovery, but also just you as an academic and you as a white person in this space?
There's a lot in that. First and foremost, it's like, whether you know this or not, you're like the perfect student. No, and I mean this like, and what I mean, maybe other people have different definitions of a perfect student, but a student is someone who comes in wanting to know and wanting to pursue and willing to push and really just wanting to know and like really wanting to learn something, really wanting to figure something out. And that's like catnip to a cat. Like I was like, oh my God, that's like, I love that. I love when someone just really wants to understand something. And like that passion and that desire to understand to me feels contagious.
Mm.
And that was, I mean, that's some of it. It was like, the student's pushing me. This is exciting. Let's go. So that was some of it. I mean, there are some of the questions that you were struggling with and some of the experiences that you were struggling with are things that, I mean, obviously from a white perspective, but was also struggling with. It's like, how do I think about these things and how do I have these conversations? And not having the conversations is worse than having them. We need to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just such a cool project. And it was really cool to sit down and listen to you think things through out loud and to sort of I didn't necessarily know where I wasn't steering you. I was really just asking you questions to push you because I thought there's something really real here and there's some real energy. And how do I support that? How do I see what's there and ask the kinds of questions that allow it to come to its fruition, not knowing where it's going? I don't know. And I still talk about that project. I think that was like the particular pile sort in the way that, and just, I described to people because you described it to me of like people. So I think you have told people about the project so they know about it from the back.
Yeah. So I had 52 cards. I was trying to do a deck of cards, and pile sorting technique was people naturally separate things in the piles. And I thought that was the coolest thing, how you put a whole bunch of stuff out and you would put us into groups and we would have to separate. And then you would show everybody how we separated. And none of us had the same type of separation. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And so I was just going around campus, like asking people to separate random things just to prove that this method was working. I was like, I learned this in class today. And so with my deck of cards, I ended up taking quotes from the news, quotes from an app called Exec that was anonymous, and people were writing a whole bunch of racist nonsense on there. Quotes from the previous research that I did with you when we were looking at liminality and change, and I was focused on Black liminality on campus. And then just personal thoughts of myself, of my own thoughts on Blackness, and I put them in a deck of cards, and I was going around asking Black people, white people, and biracial Black and white people to separate these into piles of racist and non-racist, to be able to have the conversation, not that you are racist or non-racist, but it was the beginning of the conversation, and realize people didn't want to be racist, so they would take it very seriously about separating it into a yes and no category, but we already lost because we're taking it this seriously, and then after that we would have a 30-minute, it lasted from 15 to 2 hours, depending on the person, about their thoughts, why they separated, for what reason, and stuff like that. And then after, I would have them separate the cards. Like I would shuffle them and do it. And then besides one person, everybody didn't have the same pile ever. And so it was crazy being like, well, after 30 minutes or maybe 2 hours of conversing, your thoughts have changed. What does this mean when it comes to conversations about race and education? And then I was like, oh man, clearly I'm learning something. I gotta go to school. I gotta go to more school. And then that's what led to UCLA. But I think about you in that process and you introducing that method. You introduced like 20 methods.
It only felt like 20. It was probably about 8 or 9.
Yeah. And I was like, this is the one I'm gonna do.
Well, and I remember you telling me, and I tell my students about this. I use your project as an example. It's like, when would we ever use this? It's like, let me tell you. I remember you describing like people sitting with with a card in their hand and like sort of waving it.
Yes.
And I'll do that gesture in class. I was showing the person, I was like, I don't know what to do with this card, because you wouldn't let them have a middle.
They would put it on the side for a while, and I was like, you gotta pick. Or they would put it in the middle purposely as like a form of disagreement with me. Yeah. Or they would just hold it in their hand and refuse to put it down until the last 30 seconds. And I was like, when you were telling me like, hey, yes, the piles are important, but also the gestures, the sounds, every time people would, that's where my title came from. This makes me feel uncomfortable, because that was the most common said phrase.
I know.
And so you're like, oh, this is just as much important to the research as the pile sorting itself. And that was the beginning of me recognizing, like, in a classroom when I'm teaching, yes, I'm teaching and the kids have to learn the lesson, but watching their body language when it comes to the lesson, how tired they are, how do they feel, what simple things like that have now translated into how I teach. They're like, how are you such a good teacher? Because I'm like, it's not just about the lesson on the board. It's so many other pieces to the puzzle, which includes that lesson.
Well, and this is where I think, I mean, just sorry, riffing on that teaching. Teaching isn't the performance. Teaching is the communication. It's the. I actually don't know how people can recycle lectures, because you like come in and it's like, this is different people coming into here. What do they need and what are they bringing to the table, and how is this shaping how I'm going to present this? And when am I going to have to say, you know what, I plan to do it in this order, but given this group, I actually need to do it in this order. Or, you know what, I plan to do this, but I just discovered a big gaping hole of knowledge that people don't have, and they aren't going to get this if they don't have this. So we're going to pivot and get everybody on the same page, you know, or at least give them enough so that they aren't feeling lost. Because once you're sort of lost and like, okay, this doesn't have anything to do with me, you sort of shut down and you're like, I can't follow anymore. And that's not what you want to have happen in a classroom. And as you say, you watch the body language, particularly when we were masked. I was like, I call on eyebrows, just so you know. Your face does something, I'll call on you. And not because I want to humiliate you, because I want to know where are we? Like what's provoking that reaction, because that's valuable and that's how we learn. But yeah, I do still talk about that moment with people, and I tell the students, it's like, this is as much data as anything. You can do a whole interview while someone's sitting there waving a card by their face trying to decide what they're going to do with it. Because it'll give you really good data, because people are thinking out loud to you. And that, how often do you get that?
I always spend the time trying to understand how people think, and it keeps bringing me back to what you said earlier about this idea of being in the myth. For me, it's the conversations in the space. It's the conversations at the dinner table that came up in your book club, and that's something I think about all the time, which I didn't know, where you were like, when we were talking about, I said, oh, what do you talk about at your dinner table? Realizing that a lot of white people in the book club never talked about people of color at all at the dinner table unless they were on the news. And I was like, whoa, this is news to me. I spend a lot of time thinking about how a professor said to me, what's worse than stereotypes are the assumptions that are not said. I think about that a lot. And so when it comes to thinking about a wave of a card and how that is a symbol and a conversation in itself, that if it wasn't highlighted, if you didn't think about it, then it wouldn't be valuable, it wouldn't be important. And how conversations surrounding identity, if they aren't talked about, then they aren't considered important. Like, and it doesn't necessarily mean like, let me tell you the history of slavery type importance. It's just being like, your existence is important. Let me show you what that looks like. I was talking to two of my students. They gave me the time on the podcast. One of my students, she said that my lesson to her when I was teaching her in 8th grade about double consciousness was so helpful for her, because she said, and I saw myself because I didn't know that someone else felt like me. And that's it's a simple, I gave her 2 words, it was 2 words that was able to explain so much for her. And I felt like that's how I felt the first time I took a SOAN course. Like, I was like, what? This is a world? This is language? Like, this is how I feel every day. And there's things, there's vocabulary, there's research attached to all this. And that's what I think about a lot. And so when it comes to identity, I hold it in that same regard, being like, I'm going to talk about identity with everybody so they know that they're seen.
I like that. I was thinking about, I mean, you might have seen me react a little bit to the question of, if you don't talk about it, it's not important. And I don't want to make a claim for all white people, but there's a sense that I find that for many white people, the goal is to never talk about uncomfortable things, to come back to your point. It's like, let's not have sex ed because it's uncomfortable. Like, let's not, like, and then things just don't get said. And it doesn't mean, I don't know that I agree with these. I understand why you're saying that if it's not talked about, it's not important. But I think it might be more, this is something I hate, but it is a thing. I don't want to be unpleasant. Does that make any sense to you? Have you heard that idea before?
When I've talked, and this is interesting because when I've talked to white people on this podcast, the word polite comes up a lot, and the word nice also comes up a lot. And so unpleasant, nice, and polite for me all fall under the same umbrella. And
I agree.
So being like, if those three things are not talked about, or if those three things make you uncomfortable, they're not polite, they're not pleasant, or they're not nice, then I don't want to address it, even though it will still show up in their world. But it's like it's like creating a bubble within a bubble, and I don't think that is fair to anybody else. They can have it feels like they have an armor, and if you chink their armor, then they have a problem with you, instead of being like, what if you take off the armor and you feel a little vulnerable? What if you take it off and be able to learn that, hey, you don't need this armor because your heart is the armor? What about that?
I mean, I don't disagree with you. And I think that this is where it's something that I find very frustrating. And I remember there's this thing that going back to Priscilla, she would always say, I never want to be called nice. I want to be called good. And it was like such a clear, like I understood exactly what she meant. Because nice is like making it prettier, dressing it over, making it look like it's not as bad as it is. And that's not the same thing as, I mean, nice is like a white lie as being nice, but it's like, is it being nice? And I think that whole notion of like, let's just be pleasant to one another, or let's just be nice. It's like, it means that conversations don't happen. And I personally find it very frustrating. This is one of the things I actually genuinely enjoyed about New York, because New York City in particular does not play that game. It was like, it's like, hey, you're going to tell me exactly what you're thinking. You know what? Thank you. Because I know it's certainly a thing in the Midwest, the whole niceness thing. And it's like, I don't find it appealing, because I find it obfuscating. I find it a way of disguising genuine cruelty, in a veneer of nice. But I think there is something particularly among white folk about not rocking the boat, keeping everything pleasant. And this is where we get things like white women's tears. It's like, oh, it's suddenly unpleasant, now we're going to cry. But it's just unpleasant. Yeah. It's not, we can't go around, in a nice all the time, because the world isn't nice. It's just an interesting thing to think about, is like how much doesn't get talked about because of this, whatever the hell polite means, or whatever niceness, or let's not be unpleasant is. Yeah. It's yeah. But I guess I wouldn't say necessarily that it isn't important so much as I shying away from something. It is important, and I know it's important, but I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to hide from it and cover it up with nice. That would be how I'd see it from where I'm sitting. I see your point. And I think about that actually in the context, we go all the way back to the earlier part of this conversation of, when I was in high school and was participating in colorblind ideology, having no other reference point. If race came up, it's like, oh, we don't see that. And I was like, well, that's not true. And to pretend we don't look at someone and have a reaction to how they look and how they is ridiculous. It's like, let's own that. Okay, why am I reacting that way? Is that a way I want to be reacting? There's nothing that person has done that warrants that reaction. Let me unpack that and challenge myself. Feels to me like a more authentic way to approach it. But that's not how it gets approached in my experience of predominantly white communities. Professor Holly Swyers, thank you so much for sitting in the chair and sharing your stories. I truly appreciate you coming on and talking to me. I hope it's been a fruitful conversation. I've enjoyed it. Yes. I hope it's the start of, you and I will obviously continue to have conversations, but I hope this can be a space for people to have conversations amongst themselves, even if it's like, what was that person talking about? But I think it's a useful, I think it's a great conversation starter. Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day, or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later. The Chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her.
Do your.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share